we have a very unique guest today. His name is Chris Jenks, and he's a chemist who pioneered the original extraction process for getting ibogaine out of the iboga root. This was decades ago that he came up with this process. And over the years, he's remained involved with the ibogaine movement, and he is going to come on, he's going to talk about his own story, but he's also going to talk a little bit technically about how the extraction process is done and some of the future paths going forward. As some of you may or may not know, the possibility of getting the iboga bush is sort of questionable in the coming years, and so there are other ways to get ibogaine that a chemist will certainly be able to clarify for all of us. So this should be a very interesting, very informative interview. So we'll pull on Chris now.
Hello.
Hey, Chris.
Hi.
Hey, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning. How did you hear about ibogaine?
Well, it was when I was in college, and I heard about a article that Eric put in the Magical Blend magazine, which was about ibogaine being used in therapy and also for treating addiction, and that got me interested in it because it's kind of unusual for something to have both therapeutic potential and addiction treatment potential. I mean, it sounded like a very interesting substance, and so I just got interested in it, and I actually called the author, which is kind of unusual for me. I'm usually very shy, and so it was unusual for me to sort of stick my neck out there and try to actually contact someone about it. And he tends to be a neck sticker-outer too, and so he invited me to actually come visit him, and so I did that, and that's how we got connected. And he connected me with a friend, Carl, in Italy, who
you're talking about Eric now?
Kind of took off, yeah, Eric in Florida. And he, it all just, the reason this seems to, take off is because people are so enthusiastic about it. When people find out what is possible, they get excited, and that tends to be contagious. And I guess that's why this thing is still going after these. It hasn't been decades, but it's been about 15 years or so since I've been involved. And so I can see why it keeps going. It's like, if you have a fire and you have really dry tinder, it's going to keep catching even if it, keeps getting blown out, just because it's, really good stuff. So that's what I see. There's a consolidation of things for me. It seemed to combine a couple of main motivations for me, which was the desire to explore myself and grow and learn and, and to learn about tools that can facilitate that, but also something that could actually make a real positive change in the world, something that could help to relieve people, help people to overcome addiction or to get out of that phase where they're addicted and move on with their lives, to make a real positive change in the world, something that catalyzes a healing. And so, I saw something here that I could, we all look for things where we can put a little effort in and do a lot of good. And I was seeing that opportunity in ibogaine, or here's something that people aren't paying attention to, where if I just, put my effort into this, I'll do a lot more good than if I put it into where everybody else is. So I was glad that I did.
Good. Okay, so Eric introduced you to Carl, and so what was the state of?
And have a, I'm just imagining, some group of people just, realize this works and don't have a lot of chemistry experience. How can they take the plant and get to the patient, using what I can help them to do? And so that's what I was thinking about. I wasn't thinking about big chemical companies. I was thinking about just ordinary people and how they could use what they know and what they have to bring this to people. And so that's always been my focus, is just basically connecting people and connecting the what's available, what people need. So I'm kind of a middleman.
Were you able to create an extraction process that's that simple? Because as I understand it, it is a professional lab in Italy that does a lot of the extraction. Is it possible for people to just do it in their kitchen?
Well, that's the funny thing about chemistry. And what I've always, I've kind of had a different angle on chemistry than most chemists. Most chemists have kind of pride in chemistry. They think, I understand the ins and, I understand things nobody else can understand. My attitude toward it is, it's lovely to be able to share chemistry in a way with ordinary people that they can understand without needing training. I'm kind of like at the base level. I love to see parts of chemistry that people can really use without having to go far beyond what they already have. So I guess you could call me sort of the kitchen chemist in that way, that I like to connect. I'm not talking about just using chemistry for illicit stuff, but I'm talking about just if people could understand science, how it relates to their lives in their everyday life, they'd probably be better off. But they're intimidated by it because they think it has to be all academic and stuff. They think it's out of their reach.
Right.
And I like to bring it, lower the branches a little bit so that, ordinary people can take advantage of a lot of the stuff that they thought they couldn't understand. And ibogaine chemistry, happily, is like that. It's almost like a divine gift. The chemistry of ibogaine, to a large extent, is simple, and it can be done by ordinary people. It doesn't require some big factory.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have no idea how the extraction process works. I don't know how ibogaine comes out of the root. Could you imagine you're speaking to like a 10-year-old and just explain it really simply? Because I would bet that 95% of our listeners also have no idea how this happens.
Yeah, well, ibogaine is an alkaloid. That just means that it's an organic molecule that has a nitrogen in the atom, and that makes it basic, so it dissolves in acids. Bases react with acids, and they make salts. And salts dissolve in water. It's kind of like the sort of concept there. And that's why, you can dissolve, you can, like when you make tea, if you add lemon, it sort of covers the bitter taste of the caffeine, and so you kind of get an idea of that. But basically, the idea of the iboga is that the ibogaine likes to dissolve when it has acid present. The base, since it's a basic molecule, it likes to dissolve in an acid environment when there's water. If there isn't water, then it would like to dissolve in non-polar solvents like oil, like ether and stuff like that. So that's the basic chemistry, and I guess I could flesh that out, but I know we have a short time. But there's very core concepts here that I think that it's useful for everybody to understand because it involves everyday life. I mean, even if you're cooking and using oils, you're already dealing with this kind of chemistry. Why does oil carry the flavor? It's the same concept. It's the same idea. Ibogaine would dissolve in cooking oil, just for the same reason that it extracts pretty similar things in chemistry. So what I basically did is I took some of this root and I heated it with vinegar and in Paris, and I filtered it, or I tried to filter it, and I found it wouldn't filter. And so I ran into my first obstacle. Oh, it doesn't like to be heated. This bark, when I heat it up with the diluted vinegar, it clogs the funnel. So, this is chemistry. It's very frustrating because it's like going through a jungle. Chemistry is like going through a jungle, and you're constantly hit by obstacles. And if you let that discourage you, it can be, it keeps you from finding the prize. So I had to keep asking, okay, what could I do to keep from having this problem? Well, maybe the heating caused the clogging. So I tried extracting the root without heating. Normally we heat because, when you make tea, you heat up stuff because they dissolve better when they're hot. That's the concept we're going on. But then I realized, okay, if heat is interfering with this process, then maybe I should not do that. Maybe, I'll get around it somehow. So I just tried not heating it.
Okay.
And then it filtered.
So you just soaked it in room temperature vinegar.
I basically took the root with some vinegar, diluted vinegar, and soaked it. Maybe it was lemon juice, and I squeezed it and filtered it through a coffee filter, and made a cup of tea. And my apartment mate and I tested it, and that showed that the actives in the bark had been removed from the bark.
So you drank it.
So you can see how this very simple process. I mean, I know it's very low tech and it's kind of barbaric, but it's very practical.
Right.
And
cool.
The motive behind this is that I'm thinking, okay, I'm trying to do this because I realize that people need a solution to this. And yeah, I realize that, some people, my colleagues would frown on me. What do you think you're doing? You just came out of a university where, you're not supposed to even touch anything. So there's this huge dichotomy between the way that, that we've been taught to think, but then the way that practicality would have us, would actually have us do if we actually care about people. So there's this huge rift I had to jump over to do what I was doing, and to learn what I learned. And so based on what I learned through taking that leap, that was the basis of my first extraction process. And that got refined in Italy, but it was 8 months of just refining what I had learned in a week in France, basically because I made that jump. The making the tea thing was barely just the same thing I published in the Journal of Natural Product Letters, which was basically extract your iboga bark with acetic acid, which is vinegar, filter through some cloth or paper filters, on a large scale,
or coffee filter,
and then the second, this sort of what I consider the miracle of this process, was that you don't want to have to drink this tea. The tea that we had in Paris, it was funny because my apartment mate and I, his name was Dennis, and he drank it, and he said, "Oh, this is like the bitter stuff that my Buddhist friends and I drank." And I guess they're used to drinking incredibly bitter stuff because he didn't seem to mind it. I had to really choke it down because it was horrible. One of those bitter things I had, it was horrible. And this was just a light dose. This is just to get a sense of the effect. This isn't what you would take if you were being treated. This is just to show that there's something there. This is just to tell something from nothing.
Okay.
So, there's no way I'd want anybody to have to drink as much of this as would be necessary to treat their addiction. So the question is, okay, now I've got this tea, but how do I get the goods out of the tea in such a form that people can choke it down without being tormented?
Right.
And so then what do we do with the tea? Well, if you convert the acid to a base again, then the ibogaine won't like dissolving in the water. It'll come back out of solution. And what happens is, usually in chemistry, when you do that, is that, especially when you have a mixture, because natural products are not pure compounds. They're mixtures of compounds. Several compounds, usually one doesn't even predominate. You end up with a muck.